a real big mistake I made when I was younger was I just never thought I could ever take any time off. I thought if I miss this day of training, that's going to make the difference at a competition in the end. And the reality is that, to be honest, I was training so many hours and I was so overworked that a day off to go to the Red Bull Athlete Summit would have made the world of difference. But ultimately, I look back now and I didn't invest enough in them. They were investing a lot in me. But, you know, for me to just make sure that 2 days of the year I would leave training that day, I'd work around it, I'd make the effort to go down, meet all of the other athletes, network, communicate with them. You know, it's a lesson I wish I'd learned a lot earlier. And that came into play in 2016. So that conversation I had with you before about the amazing program that Sky had set up that would carry on for a year after the Olympic Games, I really felt that in 2016 at the British Championships. We'd been struggling, me and Red Bull, to try and like get myself branded and compete in competitions. It was impossible to do that internationally. So if you're in an extreme sport, you can have Red Bull plastered all over your helmet, your snowboard. But in gymnastics, there were very, very rigid rules that I was not allowed to wear Red Bull kit at a European Championships, or World Championships and Olympic Games. So it was difficult. And it was even difficult at the Olympic Games because there are lots of strong, strict laws around branding and advertisement and sponsorship at the Olympic Games. So I wasn't technically even allowed to drink Red Bull at the Olympic Games. So that was tough, trying to get around that. And the British Championships would design this awesome kit. So I had this Red Bull kit, and I had one leotard that was white, and it had the Red Bull all over it, and one that was dark navy blue. That was my favourite. It had the Red Bull on it. And I'd gone to this British Championships branded up, ready for the 2016 Olympic trials. Now, on the first day, in the all-around final, it wasn't televised. I'd wore this Red Bull kit, and there were no issues at all. And on the second day, I turn up, I do the general warm-up, and it's going to be on BBC, this competition. And the CEO of British Gymnastics comes down, basically tells the head national coach, Sam Oldham can't wear that kit. And I think he said, why? Why can't he wear it? And they've said, there's a rule, we have a rule written into our contract that you can't wear that kit. So he comes down to the training gym before I'm about to go and compete for the Olympic trials and says, Sam, you've got to change your kit, you can't wear that kit. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, this is my kit. I've not got another leotard. I don't understand. Why can't I wear it? It makes no sense. I wore it yesterday. He said, look, it's come from the CEO. You're not allowed to wear it. There's a rule against it. So I think actually someone from Essex borrowed me one of their leotards. So I wore this navy Adidas leotard, red shorts, red longs. Competed well, won 2 medals, did really well, but was very frustrated, you know, that had happened and I couldn't work out in my head why I'd have been allowed to compete the day before, but now it was on BBC, all of a sudden, you know, the person at the top in British Gymnastics had a problem with that. That didn't make any sense to me. But anyway, I left it, did what I was told, didn't wear the kit, carried on, and in 2016, I wasn't selected for the Olympic Games, and that's huge because an Olympic Games is worth a hell of a lot in many ways, you know. Like I said, for the rest of your career, you can call yourself an Olympian. So whatever you go into, whether you're a swimmer and you go into swimming coaching and you go into swimming coaching as an Olympic swimmer or an Olympic medalist winning swimmer, that carries a lot of weight. That means a lot, you know. And for me, going to the Olympic Games in Rio had been my dream. So to have missed out on that, and, you know, at the time, I felt that it was unjust and it wasn't fair. That was a big sucker punch. And I learned a lot of life lessons around that time. And I'd also been struggling with the fact that I didn't feel that the agency that were representing me were really going out of their way to get me much work at the time. I felt in many ways that, you know, the Red Bull contract had been secured by my dad. The contract I had with Sky Sports had been, you know, they had got me through the door. They'd got me that opportunity. But it was me that, you know, they wanted to invest in Sky, and they were taking a big chunk. The going rate at the time, it probably still is, was 20%. So 20% of any money that I earned while I was tied up to the agency outside of my funding or competition earnings was going to the agency, and I just didn't feel like they were really working for it. And also, I'd been passed around different agents 3 times. So my first agent had left, my second agent had left, and I'd been passed. I was almost felt like I was just being passed around. It didn't make me feel very valued within the company at the time. So I decided that I wanted to go at it alone. You know, I was thinking, my dad's done this my whole life since I was 9 years old. He got me my very first sponsor. We can do this. He can teach me how I need to do it. So with solicitors, I had tried to get out of my contract with Mission Sports Management, which was very difficult. It was challenging. It cost me a lot of money. And at the time, it was really funny. Again, another life lesson for me to learn that, you know, up until I informed them that I was going to be leaving and I was taking legal action, you know, they'd been on my back, they were my supporters, but it's funny how it switched very quickly. And I went for a meeting down in London with my solicitor. They had their solicitors. It was really interesting, some of the things that they brought up. And we basically had to negotiate what they were going to keep and what I was going to keep. And in the end, it turned out that they had known, I think, that the situation at the British Championships with Red Bull had it not gone down very well with the guys at Red Bull, and they were struggling to get, they were feeling like they were just, it was too difficult to get into gymnastics. And at the end of that year, after I'd left the agency, I was called down to London for a meeting with my athlete representative at Red Bull. And I'd gone down and I had no idea this was going to happen. I thought I was just going to meet him. We were going to talk about the year after and my next contract. I didn't have an agent now to negotiate this for me. I was doing it myself. And yeah, he took me for a coffee and he sat me down. He said, "Sam, I'm really sorry. I've got to tell you that we're letting you go." And he just said, "We're finding it very, very difficult to get into gymnastics. It's really hard. I'm really sorry to have to do this." And at this point, I'd really learned, I think, and towards that last kind of year with Red Bull, I was really putting a lot of effort in. Those guys came to watch my Olympic trials in 2016. They were there, they saw it, they were invested in my journey. And I could tell that he had a job to do. It wasn't his fault. But yeah, I rang my dad. I had to get the train home. I said, "Dad, I can't believe it. They've dropped me." And, you know, that was probably the first real big rejection I'd had